What's happening out there, guys? I hope you're all fantastic. Today I have another episode of the Top 10, and in this one, we're diving into another childhood hero of mine, Wesley Snipes. I grew up on this guy's movies. He can do action, drama, comedy, and so much more. I have 10 of his movies picked that are my personal favorites, so let's get into it. Now also, as a disclaimer before getting into this list, Demolition Man is not going to be included. Now don't get me wrong, while it does deliver one of my favorite Wesley Snipes performances, and it is certainly a movie that I do love, I don't know, to me it's just more of a Stallone flick than it is a Wesley Snipes movie, despite them sharing lead billing, and this just isn't really one I go to when wanting to see a Snipes movie as much as it is a movie I do look for when wanting to sit back for some Sylvester Stallone action. Kicking this list off at number 10, I have the crime drama Sugar Hill from 1993. In this one, Snipes plays a drug dealer who is essentially trying to leave his life of crime in the rear view to start a new chapter with the girl that he loves, but he soon is going to realize that the violence of the past doesn't simply stop because you want it to. Now, admittedly, Snipes in this one as Romello Scuggs isn't quite on that same level of impact as Nino Brown. He doesn't have that same gusto and eccentricities. He's a bit more somber and troubled here, but still extremely driven, and I do think it works for the character. This overall is a fashionable mob movie with plenty of style. It, I would say, delivers a gritty elegance to the violence. It's a sexy movie with moments of rooftop contemplations to city backdrops. The supporting cast is fantastic. It's a bit classical. It's a bit contemporary as well. It has a sultry jazz-inspired score, and the mix is appealing with Snipes in the middle of it all, commanding the screen as a gangster wanting a fresh start. Moving right along to my number 9 pick, I have the political-themed crime thriller Murder at 1600. Here, Wesley Snipes is a detective who is called to the White House when a woman is murdered inside. He's assigned a Secret Service liaison, played by Diane Lane, and together they're going to have to sift through layers of secrecy and corruption and cover-ups to find the killer. I think this is an underrated thriller with Snipes and Diane Lane forming an unlikely but extremely effective duo. Snipes, I think, plays the character very grounded to capture a charming everyman vibe. The DC locations create an engaging political atmosphere which really is perfect for the layers of deceit that Snipes and Lane are going to have to forge through on this case. There's also a historical undercurrent that creates an appealing atmosphere while watching. I think it's a smart film that certainly doesn't deliver the big action gusto you would expect, but instead focuses on layering and exploring a murder mystery with twists and turns that can grab onto your imagination before you know it. And I don't know, for me, for some reason, this is just always a fun rainy day movie. My number 8 pick is one of the all-time great sports comedies, and while Snipes doesn't have a ton of screen time, I still had to put the 1989 classic Major League on the list. Here, Snipes plays the fast-talking, base-stealing outfielder for the Cleveland Indians, an underdog team of misfits that end up making a Cinderella run for the playoffs despite all the odds. Now, admittedly, Snipes doesn't have a ton of screen time in this film either, but Major League is just one of the GOATs in terms of all-time best comedies and sports comedies overall, and a young Snipes is awesome with a blend of physical humor, athleticism, and natural comedic timing. The laughs in this film are relentless, and Snipes, pre-action star, delivers plenty of his own memorable moments. The story of the underdog team is loaded with charm and humor and great baseball. The baseball in this movie injects the film with plenty of adrenaline-pumping sequences, and Snipes really does let his charisma fuel his role perfectly as the wisecracking, base-stealing Willie Mays Hayes. Snipes is staying in his baseball uniform for my number 7 pick because I have the underrated psychological thriller The Fan from 1996, directed by Tony Scott. Wesley Snipes here again is a star baseball player who is stalked by just a deranged knife salesman with a broken life, played with a calculated insanity by film legend Robert De Niro. Now, I would consider this to be another undermentioned film on the Snipes collection. I think it's a very atmospheric movie that really thrives on Tony Scott's slick and gritty direction. It's a polished movie. There's a looming tension hovering over this story that creates an uneasy vibe while watching, and Wesley Snipes, to no surprise, is perfect as the baseball superstar. He's charismatic and charming and commanding and just captures all the gravitas of a sports icon with ease, and I definitely think Robert De Niro pairs with him nicely. I think De Niro just, I would say, spirals delightfully into the darkness to capture this unhinged character. The darkness and just sinister intensity of this entire movie really does hinge on his character, and De Niro absolutely delivers. It has a smooth progression to continually just elevate the tension and the stakes before finally exploding into a satisfying closing act. Moving along to my number 6 pick, I have the movie that put Snipes on the map as an action star, 1992's Passenger 57, where Snipes plays Air Marshal John Cutter, a passenger on board the same flight that is coincidentally transporting a demented international terrorist. Now, this movie definitely feels like an 80s film pulled into the 90s, but it does bring some of its own style and edge to certainly stand on its own merits, and I think it was the perfect vehicle to launch Snipes as an action star. Encountering Snipes is Bruce Payne as a fun, comically eccentric villain, but I mean, Snipes hands down is the driving force of this action thriller. He's cool and charming and just definitely capable in the lead. He delivers some awesome martial arts action. He's kicking and punching and spinning and taking down bad guys and dispensing one-liners, and the sultry saxophone-driven score just heightens the mood perfectly, and I certainly think this is a movie that can appeal just as much in the 2020s as it did back in the 1990s. Okay, so with Wesley Snipes' action debut in the books, we've reached the middle of my list, and for my number 5 pick, I have what I think is another underrated crime drama, that being 1993's Rising Sun. Here, Wesley Snipes stars alongside another legend, Sean Connery. They play a couple of liaisons that are sent to work the case of a murdered woman found inside the offices of this very highly secretive Japanese corporation operating within the United States. I think this is another film that's a bit undermentioned on Wesley Snipes' resume. It weaves a very compelling case of murder and corporate conspiracy, and Snipes and film legend Sean Connery are really fun together in this movie. I think they play off one another nicely as their characters, I would say, both learn from one another as they weave through this complicated case. It has this undercurrent of international corporate takeover that was really prevalent at the time. Snipes does have his few spots of action, but he really does rely on his acting chops in this one, and I think it works. Overall, this is a very moody flick with a mysterious atmosphere and a solid direction overall, and for some reason, this is another go-to movie on a rainy day for me, and maybe that's just because it's always raining in the movie. Next up, for my number 4 pick, I have another classic actioner from the Snipes filmography, Drop Zone from 1994. Here, Snipes is a detective once again, but this time he's infiltrating the world of skydiving to capture a computer hacker that is on the run with a group of criminals led by the always entertaining Gary Busey. Now, this is definitely another of Wesley Snipes' pure action flicks, and I just love the summer atmosphere of it. It immerses itself in just the subculture of skydiving, and it's a joyfully wild ride. The structure of the plot certainly is familiar for the genre, but I would say the South Florida locales, a heist centered on parachuting, and Gary Busey in full villain mode with Snipes in the center of it all give this movie plenty of engaging elements to have fun with. I think the skydiving sequences can definitely have you on the edge of your seat, with spots of hand-to-hand combat and gunplay all serving as icing on the cake. I think Snipes definitely carries the film with his charm, as you would expect. Busey is an awesome villain, just in a very cartoonish way, and this is just another charismatic actioner from the 90s that delivers just an enjoyable intensity that makes it a good time anytime you hit the play button. And with that said, we've reached the top 3 Wesley Snipes movies, and coming in at number 3, I have easily Snipes' most iconic movie, 1998's Blade, where he plays the cool, leather-clad daywalker who wears sunglasses and kills vampires.
Now, I think we can all agree that Wesley Snipes was perfect for the role of Blade. He was cool, commanding, and mysterious. He definitely had a swagger to his demeanor, and he was awesome during the action sequences. I mean, I remember growing up, that bloodbath scene in the very beginning of the movie was one of the coolest things. The direction and cinematography are just excellent in this film. I mean, visually, this movie creates just a bleak, stylized hyper-reality that I think just fits the mood of the plotline perfectly. But, I mean, really, this movie just shines because of Wesley Snipes' Blade. I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves for just bringing some legitimacy to comic book movies, but I definitely think his performance in this one and its sequel, maybe not so much Part 3, will always be remembered. Although I guess you could say the third will be remembered, just not really for the right reasons.
Coming in at number 2 on my list, I have easily another one of Snipes' most iconic performances, 1991's New Jack City, co-starring Ice-T and Judd Nelson. Here, Snipes is the bold and eccentric Nino Brown, a ruthless kingpin who's taking over the city in the crack game, with Ice-T and Nelson playing a couple of streetwise detectives that are trying to bring his empire down to justice.
Now, this movie definitely does deliver some other great elements to surround Wesley Snipes. At the time of its release, the story was very timely and real despite its over-embellishments. Van Peebles' direction was very stylish and gritty, but still very raw, which was just perfect for the tone of the story. The supporting cast, I think, was fantastic, and the soundtrack and the musical scoring across the board was just, I would say, flawless. Yet, regardless of all of those pieces of quality filmmaking, Wesley Snipes as Nino Brown is what has maintained this movie in pop culture relevance. I mean, Snipes was sadistic and relentless and vile and cunning and just calculated overall, yet he still managed to bring just an undeniable charm to the character with his charisma. I mean, Snipes in this movie has countless memorable moments and memorable lines, and I think it could easily be one of his best performances. I mean, he may have had some other roles along the way that really required more range in acting from him, but I mean, come on, to deliver a character that directly results in creating a timeless appeal for a film, New Jack City along with Blade would certainly be those pinnacle performances for Wesley Snipes.
And with that one in the books, we've reached the top of my list, the pinnacle, some would say, and for my number 1 pick, I have another classic comedy that I think will stand the test of time no matter what, White Men Can't Jump from 1992, co-starring Woody Harrelson. Here, Snipes and Harrelson are a couple of street ballers who pair up to try and win big money on the street courts of Los Angeles.
Now, I'm sure I have this movie much higher on my list than other people would put it on theirs, but I absolutely love it. I can't imagine a better pair than Snipes and Harrelson for the leads, and the basketball action is awesome. As this story progresses through this odd couple bromance, there are frequent fun, action-packed pickup games to just immerse yourself in. Both Snipes and Harrelson are flexing their court skills, which allows for some great visual action. They're just balling out, and the camera gets to just sit back and capture it all. It's a buddy comedy with an odd couple twist and a basketball overcoating, and to me, it just all works together like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with Wonder Bread.
And that's my list, guys. Those are my top 10 favorite Wesley Snipes movies. Let me know what some of your favorite Snipes flicks are down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Be on the lookout for another top 10 video coming very soon. And if you have anybody that you would like to see covered in a future episode, let me know down in the comments as well.